Hello guys, today we'll be talking about this wonderful little bench and how you can do it too for about 50 bucks using some very simple tools in the normal home ownership conditions. Now, I've already made this, and I don't really want to take it apart, but I am going to tell you step by step exactly how to make it. I'm going to use a 3D model and some other means to be able to tell you exactly how to do that. What kind of wood you need, how to connect it, and various other things. And also, how to adapt it to make it exactly how you want. Because it can be longer, it can be wider, it can be exactly what and how you need. Now, in my case, the structure is 1.6 meters long, 46 centimeters deep, and 40 centimeters tall. In my case, I've used a 15 centimeters by 2 centimeters tall pine board and 12 by 6 centimeter squares which I've joined together. Of course, you can change them. I mean, you can use a different wood or different dimensions, depends on what works really well in your country, in your climate, and what you have available. Now, to be able to do this, you need some very simple tools, like a hand drill, some form of a saw. In this case, I've used this one. It's actually not even mine. It's borrowed from one of the neighbors, and it does a pretty good job. And some form of a sander. It could be this one, it could be a hand sander. Really depends on what conditions your wood is in. In this case, it's also borrowed from someone else, so it's not actually even my tool. So you also want some basic tools like this square, a pencil, at least one of these bad boys, and some other things that you typically use in woodworking. Now, what you want to start with is doing two things. One, starting with the legs, and the dimensions, they should look something like that. You can, again, change them exactly how you need, depends on the width and on the length and whatever else that you need. But in general, the legs should look more or less like that. Now, once you have the legs cut and put aside so that you know more or less how to connect them, in my case, from the same material, I've used this little jig, which was actually really simple. It didn't last very long, but it did the job exactly how I needed for this specific use case. Now, I've used these little pegs to connect them together. I think that's what they're called. I don't actually know. Anyway, I've put some wood glue in there, and what I did additionally, put two massive screws right in there that went all the way through to add as an additional fastener. It did strengthen the legs by quite a bit, and it did a pretty good job. And what I did after that is put these little wooden pegs in there with some wood glue, and then I just sanded them off to be flush. With the center connection, it's exactly the same thing. I mean, that's pretty much how I connected it, exactly the same as those corners. And once that's done, I've used the planetary sander to sand them off so that they actually look quite flush. And it seems to be looking quite good. Next, you want to do the sitting support. It's this structure that effectively connects to your legs that you put more wooden boards on so that you can sit on it. It doesn't break, it doesn't bend. It will do a pretty good job in that regard. And the connection itself is actually really simple. You just use a wood screws and just screw them right from the side on the side of the board. And that's pretty much it. And I've added these squares as an additional support. Now, this support is there so that the seat has an additional support, because as you're sitting, all of that will be pushing downwards, and you want to prevent that from happening or sagging. Now, the connection of these bad boys is actually really simple. I've effectively screwed this in from the side at an angle towards the legs. Exactly the same with this thing. Now, you can put it flush with the end of this board, or you can cut in like I did here. I don't exactly know why I did this. I don't know, but it kind of looks nice. Now, once you have that, the rest is actually super simple, because effectively you just have your wooden boards and you just want to screw them down. What I like to do is put a wooden piece so that all of these fasteners are actually aligned with one another. And when you combine aligned fasteners across the whole thing, it just looks that little bit more professional. Now, in my case, I've used raw timber to actually make this happen, so I did have to protect it. Now, I did put 2 coats of sealer and 2 coats of stain. In my case, because I needed to be fitting more or less with my patio, it was a stain of American mahogany. And when I have the whole thing, after I sanded it off, after I cut it, and it's looking really nice, put 2 coats of sealer and 1 coat of stain. And the reason I put the stain only once instead of twice is because when I put them together, sometimes they don't fit perfectly well. So I do tend to sand it off and then put additional coat of stain just so that it looks perfect. However, one additional thing I do recommend is to try to protect it from water by any means you can, especially from the bottom, because that's where some water will be sitting in and it will rot the first. So you do want to put some tiny feet in there, just screw them from the bottom, or in my case, I've used a polyethylene tape to make a nice space between the ground and the wood itself. And that's pretty much it. That's exactly how to do this very simple yet quite complicated modern looking bench, which in my case fits perfectly fine in my patio. Hope you've enjoyed. Subscribe for more content like this.